Yeah, well, okay. The thing this time around, talking about the Grade Center. Not going to try to talk all about what you can do in the Grade Center, but thinking about how to clean up the Grade Center to start actually using it. If it's not something you've done a lot of, or if you've just never tidied up your Grade Center, there's a few things you can do to make it a little easier to work with. For starters, here I am in the Grade Center. I'm going to go ahead and collapse down my course menu to get a little more space to work with. I do have a number of columns in the Grade Center right now. I'm not going to deal with the most of the columns that have been added to this course through assignments and tests and things. Instead, I'm going to focus on the ones that were there by default in the course. Last name, first name, username, student ID, last access, availability, weighted total, and total. Those are in every course, even if you've never done anything with your Grade Center. And a good half of them are completely useless. Maybe more than half, depending on how you want to use these things. Okay, so last name, obvious what it is. First name as well, very obvious. Username, in the case of your students, that's going to be their 9-digit student ID number. Student ID, we don't even bother to fill out because the username is the student ID number. Last access will give you the date of the last time that students have accessed your course. Now you can find that out in other places like the performance dashboard as well. But it's also listed as a column here by default. Availability, utterly pointless. It's going to tell you one of two things. During the semester, it's going to show you available for all your students. About 2 weeks after your class is over, it just shows unavailable for all your students. You never really need to worry about that one. And weighted total and total, chances are you will not need both because you're either going with a straight up add of the points or you're doing some grade weighting. It's unlikely that you'll be doing both at once. So what I'd like to do is actually hide some of these columns and clean up the screen a little bit. The easiest way to do that is to go on the Manage menu down to Column Organization, and it groups all of those default ones together, and down here I've got weighted total and total as well. So considering these, first name, last name, yeah, obviously I want that. I have no use for student ID or availability. Username, that's one of the ones you might want to make a strategy call on. Do you ever actually look up your students by ID number? If you don't, go ahead and suppress that one as well. The last access, again, do you actually care about this one way or the other? I personally like to leave last access because that way when I'm looking at grades, I can see the last time any of my students have actually accessed the course without having to go look that up separately. Okay, so I check the boxes next to the things that I want to not show up in the Grade Center, then go up and just say Hide Selected Columns, and then Submit. It loads up the grade grid again, and now those columns I selected aren't there anymore. So you notice this is a lot easier to work with. Okay, now weighted total, total. I said you don't need both. Personally, I just have trouble wrapping my brain around grade weighting, so I end up using the total. So I will just go ahead and delete the weighted total column. If I decide I want it back again, I can always create it later on, but notice how much trimmer this looks, and I can see a lot more of the actual grading columns from this view without having to do as much sideways scrolling. Now, obviously, that's going to be an inevitable part of having multiple things in your Grade Center, but there's certainly stuff you can do to clean up this left-hand side of the screen and make it a little better. Actually, with the way I hid those things, I could have also chose Hide Column off of here. The reason I wanted to go to Manage Column Organization is because I could do multiple ones at the same time instead of one at a time, because each time you hide an individual column, it has to reload the whole grid, and I didn't want to mess with that. Okay? So those are some nice, simple things you can do to clean up your Grade Center before moving on to actually having gradable items in it in the first place, or even now if you've been grading things for a while, just to clean up your view a bit.